All right, so I'm Aimee Quesnele. I teach psychology amongst many different programs. So this is the standard look of most of my Moodle shells. I'll just change the top depending on the course. So this is when I just started teaching this semester, Issues in Developmental Psychology. I'm going to first explain how I've switched my teaching over to this new COVID style format. So most of my courses are actually hybrid, which means I'm only scheduled with the students for either 1 hour face-to-face synchronously and then 2 hours asynchronously, or reverse. I have scheduled 2 hours synchronously and 1 hour asynchronously. This was done pre-COVID. They've made the transition for a few of the courses. So I was already doing that in class. And now that we've switched online, I tend to meet with the students synchronously about 45 to 60 minutes a week. During that time, I'll usually answer any questions they have, introduce assignments, and I'll also record my instructions to then post on Moodle. And then I'll do a review activity from the previous week's lessons. I use Kahoot a lot. So for formative assessment, a lot of questions, and then I'll pause after each one and explain the concept further. And then I'll do an activity, usually using breakout rooms, which I found intimidating at first, but super easy to use. Right from Zoom. So I'll group them and then they'll explore questions. So this past week, we were looking at moral development. So I asked them the question that the researcher actually looked at, and then I had them discuss it in groups, come back and share what the group had discussed. And then I introduced the concept of moral development in the different stages. So I don't focus on all the concepts. It's really a heavy course. So I just choose one or two. It helps develop kind of that group teamwork, as well as get to know each other in this virtual setting. And I find it just helps them link the material to the lesson. So then after my Zoom, they'll work on a lesson that I've recorded. I usually use Nearpod for my recordings and my lessons, which I find really easy to use. Most students like it, although I find in each class, one or two students tend to struggle with Nearpod, or it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. And this past week I used Moodle lesson, which I found a lot more work up front for me, but I'm using an OER, so I have no textbooks for my courses. I use all online resources, and I was able to embed the readings right into the lesson. And then I would go through and highlight what some of the key concepts are. So some students really preferred that. So they're not doing the Nearpod lesson, listening to me explaining the slides and the reading separately. They liked having them both combined. And I do a poll halfway through the semester anonymously to ask the students, what are you liking that we're doing in Zoom? What do you like about the independent work? And then ask them to be specific so then I can plan for the second half of the semester. Usually it's a split between what they like. So I like getting the feedback, but it's really hard to please everyone. Half will like Zoom and Nearpod, and the other half will like Moodle lessons. So it's somewhat helpful. I like when they're specific and point out what they do like, so then I can kind of make a meld of what everyone's feedback is. So that's what I do during my lessons. This is how I set up most of my Moodle shells look the same. I have my faculty information, how to contact me, and then a direct link, brief introduction, especially about the blended course, because many students might not understand. They'll see them scheduled for an hour and not realize there are 2 other hours that they need to be spending on the course. Start here, again, brief overview of what our textbook is, the online evaluations, weekly lessons, and then my syllabus. And then on the online textbook, this is the link to it. If it's all in one, sometimes I'm piecing it together. And in that case, I'll just add it to the week that I am covering the material. And then I have an evaluations link. This is directly from my syllabus, so this will be familiar to them. And then I load in each individual application. And I use Google Docs a lot. So I'll type it in here and then just have the link for them and then the submission underneath. So the applications are about 5%, and they're done almost every other week. And then I have larger assignments that I have. And again, just strict links to the Google Doc where I've recorded the instructions. And then weeks, this tends to be a typical look for each of my weeks. I have the learning objectives and I try to bold what we're going to be focusing on. And then the readings from the pages, as well as the Nearpod lessons. And then at the end, I have the online work that they're going to do, and then reminding them about the readings for this coming week. That's something I've added because students were waiting until that week and it was just overwhelming. So they can prepare a little bit ahead of time. So is there anything that you want me to specifically look at? I can show you my I was going to look at the Moodle lesson. So this was the Moodle lesson that I created, and maybe I can quickly show you what it looks like for the students. So I have an introduction. Some of the students, what they found confusing, and this might be me because I've only used it a few times, is they found it hard to navigate. So this is the link that brings them to the next page. So this is my introduction. This is what I'll do on Zoom. I'll introduce all the topics, quickly explain how they apply, and then I'll leave them to complete the rest of the lesson on their own. And when I do the Moodle lesson, I don't record, which I was doing in Nearpod. So then they would review what the physical development in this stage is, and then I'd have questions embedded right after, which I liked. So you can do this in Moodle as well. They would answer it, and if they got it wrong, they can try again, which is something that I found beneficial for them. Anything else that you'd like me to specifically focus on, or questions that you want me to look at?